Laura Vogel had recently moved to Maui, although she had been living in Hawaii for 9 years. She loved the outdoors and, in fact, had a master's degree in wildlife biology. She made her living in Maui being a tutor and spent all her free time either surfing, camping, hiking, or birdwatching. Maui seems like the perfect place for Laura Vogel. On February 21st, 2010, Laura spent the afternoon at a friend's house. When she headed out later that afternoon, she told her friend she was heading up to the Pauwela Lighthouse on the north end of the island to camp out under the stars for the night. At 8:20 p.m., she texted her friend that she was camping near the birthing pools and was meeting some locals. Laura would never be seen or heard from again. Where is Laura Vogel? If you are here, I thank you so much for supporting the show and our mission. Today's case is a case I've been following in the past, and although it's definitely baffling, it's very limited on the information that we do have. There are two main theories in this case of Laura Vogel. We'll get to those in a bit, but I think it's interesting how the public seems split 50-50 on these possibilities. And law enforcement, well, we don't hear from them much at all. There has been a little media coverage on Laura, at least right after she went missing back in 2010, but not a lot. Her brother did an interview with Jane Velez Mitchell, and of course, local news picked up the story, a few bloggers, but that's about where it ends. Hawaii has its fair share of missing person cases, believe it or not. A lot of times people go there with the full intention to disappear, kind of like Alaska. But that's definitely not the case here with Laura Vogel. Laura was a single woman, 43 years old, back in February of 2010. She hailed originally from New Mexico and had gone to college receiving a master's degree in wildlife biology. She loved everything outdoors and adventurous. She became a high school teacher and a girls' soccer coach, and even today, many of her students come forward on their Facebook page to mention how great of a teacher Laura was, one of those teachers that leaves a lasting impression on a student. When Laura was 34, she followed her dream to relocate to Hawaii, moving first to the island of Oahu. In late summer of 2009, Laura moved to the island of Maui. She made a living by tutoring students and was very responsible when it came to her job. She enjoyed what she did, and it afforded her to be able to live a less stressful lifestyle on the islands. On Sunday, February 21st, 2010, Laura was visiting a friend. She left her friend's house around 5:30 p.m. and said she was heading to the north end of the island to camp out and sleep under the stars for the night. Laura had a tutoring client appointment the next morning, Monday morning, at 9 a.m. She knew she could be home in time for that, and she was looking forward to just enjoying the beauty of that part of the island. Laura was specifically headed to the area of Pauwela Lighthouse. This is a beautiful scenic area of the island with, of course, the lighthouse, an observatory, many trails to hike, and steep cliffs right up against the ocean. While Laura did love to hike, her friend said she only had a pair of flip-flops with her and wasn't looking to do any hiking, more like just some relaxing and enjoying the views for the night. Laura made it to the spot where she planned to camp, and around 8:20 p.m., sent her friend this text message. Quote, "I'm camped down the way from the birthing pools and meeting all the locals." End quote. Now, I was curious about these birthing pools and this area, but couldn't find a whole lot of information on them, specifically the ones near the Pauwela Lighthouse where Laura was. There are others on the island, but apparently those near Pauwela are not encouraged to visit. In fact, one reviewer on TripAdvisor has this to say when someone posted and asked for advice on swimming and visiting these birthing pools. The question is asking about the cliffside pools near Pauwela. If so, please don't try to go there. First, it's not a very tourist-friendly area. Second, the ground is treacherous. Third, you have to trespass to get to the ocean. Fourth, the pools are very probably not birthing pools, as ancient Hawaiians rarely chose to give birth in a dangerous rocky area. So that's an interesting review for that part of the island where Laura was. The next morning, Laura misses her tutoring appointment, and that day, friends and family can't reach her. Right away, people start to worry because Laura keeps in contact with everyone very regularly. Not to mention, she would never miss a tutoring appointment. When the family learned that Laura never returned home from her campout, they contacted the Maui police. But the family said the Maui PD told them to wait 24 hours and then call them back. But the family didn't want to wait, and friends on the island were alerted that Laura was missing, and they decided to go search for her themselves. They headed up to the north end of the island near the Pauwela Lighthouse and birthing pools, where Laura said she had been, and they found something disturbing. Right where she said she was, they found Laura's van. There are conflicting reports of which door was left wide open. Some say it was the driver's side door, and some say it was the passenger's side door. But in any event, one of the doors was wide open when they found it. Not only that, but inside the van, they found the keys in the ignition and Laura's laptop on the back seat, but they couldn't find Laura anywhere. Friends immediately called the Maui police, who did now come out to investigate that area. A search of the area by law enforcement turned up nothing. They took the van in for processing, and they brought in search dogs who combed the area for 4 days. During that time, about 2 days after the van was found, a search did turn up Laura's cell phone nearby, broken into pieces. When they examined the cell phone records, they learned that right after Laura sent that text message to her friend, letting her know where she was, her phone made a few calls in quick succession to one number and then hanging up. Further investigation led them to a homeless transient man that was known to live in the area. That number belonged to him. When questioned, however, he said he had no idea who Laura was, nor did he know why her phone called his. And authorities did determine the man had been fishing with some other transient people about a half a mile east of Vogel's van on the night of her disappearance. He denied having been involved in her case, and he did take a polygraph, but authorities stated he was so uncooperative during the exam that the results were inconclusive. Police even searched his campsite and his vehicle, but they found nothing of interest, nothing that led them to believe he had had any contact with Laura Vogel. The family would also learn during the weeks that followed her disappearance, as they all worked together to try and find her, that the area she was known to be in was not necessarily considered a safe area. And that brings me back to that TripAdvisor review where someone mentioned the exact same thing. The area was known to be heavy into drugs and crime and not a place for tourists or outdoor enthusiasts to go camp. Did Laura not know this, being that she was only on Maui for 6 months? Or did she simply not care, believing she could take care of herself? We may never know what her thought process was. Shortly after the investigation began, authorities would release Laura's van back to the family. Her brother Tim has remained active in finding his sister, even starting a blog to keep everyone informed. and has worked the media circuit as best as he can. He told Jane Velez Mitchell during an interview that when he received the van back, he decided to look through it himself. And within a minute of looking, Tim found Laura's wallet in the console of the van. The problem with this is the authorities had stated from the beginning they didn't have the wallet, and it was listed as missing. They said it was likely lost or stolen or had never been there to begin with. And this led the family to doing searches through Laura's financial records, looking for any activity on bank accounts or credit cards. When the wallet was discovered to have been in the van all along, all those hours of searching records for clues were wasted. The family was not happy. Did law enforcement really just miss finding the wallet, or was there a breakdown in communication somewhere? Again, it's hard to speculate when the police department hasn't come forward to explain. I don't want to point fingers, but I think it's a fair question that the family deserves answers to. On March 19th, 2010, almost a month after Laura disappeared, Texas EquiSearch sent an expert over to Maui to help in the search. The family also hired RP Search Services, which brought in drones and other search technology. The police did speak to everyone in the area with a concentration on the homeless encampment nearby. No one recalled seeing Laura at all. And while this isn't helpful to the investigation, the family feels that it is odd that not one person can recall seeing her there. The police came to their own conclusion regarding Laura Vogel, and her family came to theirs. This leads us to the two main theories in Laura's disappearance. Theory number one, Laura had an accident off of one of the many dangerous spots along the cliffs and shoreline in that area where her van was found, near Pauwela Lighthouse. Law enforcement has stated that they believe this is very likely. It's a dangerous area, and Laura was thought to be wearing only flip-flops. A hike to those cliffs could have been a bad decision on her part, slipping off the edge and falling to the rocky waters below. In many areas, the drop is 50 to 60 feet, with many jagged edges and rocks in the ocean. She could have fallen into the waters and met her demise. But then what about her van? Well, some think that maybe one of the homeless in the area opened her van door and rummaged around looking for something, possibly drugs. But why not steal her laptop, which was in plain view? Or how does that explain why the keys were in the ignition? Is that something Laura normally did when leaving the van to go on a hike? And while these questions make a lot of people wonder, authorities are quick to point out that it doesn't necessarily mean that foul play was involved. They have found no evidence pointing to something nefarious happening at the van, and found nothing to tie her to the other homeless man, the one with the phone, other than those random calls. There was really no sign of a struggle, no blood, no damage to the van, no clues at all to make authorities believe something bad happened. Laura was the adventurous type. While her friends and family maintain she had no intention to hike that day, we can't be sure that she just didn't decide to take a quick walk. Being in flip-flops could have been detrimental to her hike and led her to having a fall in a very rocky and dangerous area. But then we do have another theory. Theory number two. Laura met with foul play. Authorities might be quick to point out there is nothing to lead them to believe foul play. The family believes this is the more likely theory. They say Laura was far too knowledgeable to try a dangerous hike on her own in flip-flops. She was very athletic and knew how to handle herself in the outdoors. And maybe even more importantly, she never would leave her keys in the ignition and her laptop out in plain view. Her family has been quick to question law enforcement too, and doesn't feel that Laura's case has been given the due diligence it deserves. The phone calls to the transient man, for example, why hasn't he been looked into further? Did they ever try to polygraph him a second time since the first one didn't work out so well? Or did he just refuse? There was no history of Laura ever calling this man before, or anything to indicate that the two ever knew each other or had even crossed paths. It just doesn't make sense. What do you think happened to Laura Vogel? Laura is described as being a Caucasian female, 5 foot 8 inches tall, and weighing around 145 pounds at the time she disappeared. She was 43 years old and would today be 55 years old. She was last seen wearing a blue t-shirt and gray sweatpants. Laura had blonde hair and blue eyes. If you have any information on the whereabouts of Laura Vogel, please contact the Maui Police Department at 808-244-6400 and refer to case number 10-14126. Thank you so much for listening to Laura's story. Her disappearance is definitely suspicious, and hopefully one day soon, the family will have some answers. Also, a big thank you for being a supporter of our show. We will be back again next week with another unsolved missing person case. And until then, stay safe and hug your loved ones.